'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when you find yourself in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight.
When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be true, 'tis the gift to labor till the day is through. And when you find yourself in the place so fine, to be in the cool of the birch and the pine. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Reverend Marcus Liefert, and I am so glad to be with you here this morning. If you're visiting with us for the first time, I especially want to offer our welcome. We hope that no matter who you are or how you make your living, no matter whom you love or how you experience the sacred, you'll feel welcome here among us in the fullness of your being. We have a lunch after the service each week. You're welcome to make your way all the way across the atrium. It's freely offered every Sunday. Hope you can stay for conversation, food, and connection after the service. All are welcome. We acknowledge as we gather each week here at the intersection of arts, justice, and spirituality that we gather on the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, Huchiun. We hope that we who have inherited this broken covenant with indigenous peoples in the earth will do our part to repair it and make it whole. We hope we will have the wisdom, the courage, the humility to live into a new solidarity with indigenous peoples and the earth. There's a memory book at the back of the sanctuary. You're always welcome to write there if there's something on your heart that you'd like read aloud during the service, a joy or sorrow, grief or gratitude. You can always just light a candle too for a silent memory or prayer. As we gather each week, explore different themes in our worship. And I'll tell you the theme that we're launching today, but first I want to acknowledge that this time that we live in, we have a sub-theme for the indefinite future of surviving autocracy, surviving the authoritarian takeover of our government. And so, wherever your heart is, we hope that this congregation and this sanctuary will be space for you to rest and set down your worries among people who are safe enough to be with. Our theme is love in translation these next few weeks as we kick off a stewardship campaign. Our wonderful stewardship co-chairs will tell you a little bit later in the service this brilliant notion they had of using Gary Chapman's work, The 5 Love Languages, to talk about how we make love at the center at our church. So thanks for being part of this place where we do make love tangible among us each week. Before we sing our first hymn, would you rise in body or spirit, and we'll just send a little bit of that love by waving out to those joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever you are. We feel you with us. Thanks for being here. Would you just turn and greet your neighbor this morning? Wish them a wonderful Sunday.
Before thousands, you can. like to invite Owen Rosales and his parents, Melissa and Dave, up to light our chalice this morning. We light our chalice with these words from the Sufi mystic Hafiz, from the 14th century. The sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. Tell you a story this morning that comes to us from India, or at least that's what the internet says. I couldn't find any actual confirmation that this was originally told in India, but that's what we're going to go with. So this is a story about a young boy named Ravi, and Ravi lives with his mother in a small village. And Ravi, more than anything else in the world, wants a drum. He can feel the rhythm in his body, and he really, really wants a drum to beat on every day. But Ravi and his mother don't have much money. They have enough money to have a house and to have enough food, but they don't have enough money to buy Ravi a drum. And so Ravi's mother feels a little bad about this, and so at night, after she's done all the rest of her work, she works and she takes 2 large sticks and she whittles them down a bit and she makes them a little fancy, and she gives them to Ravi one morning and says, we can't afford a drum, but maybe use these sticks to beat on each other, and that will be fun. And Ravi says, he's a sweet boy, he says, thank you so much. And he goes off on his day. One of the great parts of Ravi's life is that he just roams freely around the village to see what he can see. And he takes his sticks and he heads off to do just that. And as he's walking along, he comes across one of his neighbors who is sitting in the front yard. And normally she sits in the front yard with her stove and bakes bread. But this morning, the stove is just sending out all kinds of terrible smoke. There's no fire. It's just dark, smoky awfulness that's getting in her eyes. And she says, Ravi, I can't get the fire to light. The wood is all wet. It just won't light. I can't bake bread. I have some left, but I can't make any more. And Ravi looks at his sticks, and he thinks, these would really help her. And he thinks about his mother taking the time to make the sticks for him, and he says, she needs them more than I do. And he says, here, take my sticks, they'll light your fire and dry the rest of your wood, and then you can make bread. And the woman says, thank you. And she wraps up a big loaf of bread and hands it to Ravi. Says, take this for your sticks. Ravi likes bread. Who doesn't like bread? And so he thinks, great, I'll just walk around and eat my loaf of bread today. And he walks on, and he comes across a different neighbor, the potter's wife, who is sitting with her child who is crying and crying and crying. And Ravi says, what is wrong? And the potter's wife says, the potter has gone away to get clay, and we don't have any food in the house, and my kid is so hungry. Well, Ravi looks at his bread, and he thinks, I'm not that hungry. My mom will feed me when I get home. And he thinks, okay. And he hands the woman the loaf of bread. And the child immediately takes a piece and stops crying. And the woman says, oh, thank you so much. Here is a pot. We have many, many pots. Here is a large pot for you in return. And Ravi thinks, okay, but that's kind of heavy. And I like to walk around, but yes, thank you for the pot. And so Ravi thinks, well, I have a pot. I'm going to go down to the river and put some water in it and see what happens. I can play in the water with my pot. And as Ravi heads down to the river, he hears a couple arguing. And they are really, really mad at each other. And it turns out they're the washers in town. And the husband has broken the large pot that they use to wash the clothes. And the wife is, well, not happy. How are we going to finish our work? Where are we going to make our money? And Ravi says, hey, I'm right here and I have a big pot. I would be happy to give you this pot. And they calm right down and they say, thank you, Ravi, that is great. Here is a coat that we have that somebody left a long time ago, and we would love you to have it in return for the pot. And Ravi says, okay, thank you. The coat is enormous. Ravi can't wear it. It hits the ground. The sleeves are this long. He doesn't, but he's like, okay, I will take it home, and my mother maybe can make a blanket out of it. And so he takes the coat and he heads on down the river a little further away, and he runs into a man who is crying on the side of the river in his underwear. I know. And the man says, robbers have just come by and stolen everything. They took my money and my watch. They took all of my clothes. He just left me my underwear, thank goodness. But I am so cold, and I'm pretty embarrassed by the whole thing. And Ravi says, no worry. I have just the thing. And he hands the man this enormous coat, which of course fits perfectly on the man. And the man says, oh, thank you so much. This makes all the difference. I'm a wealthy man, but it was pretty embarrassing to just be in my underwear. And he says, the one thing they didn't take was my wagon. Please take the wagon as a thank you for the coat. And Robbie says, great, a wagon, that will be fun. And so it's a pull wagon, and he pulls it along behind him, and he heads on down the road. It is quite a day for Robbie. This doesn't normally happen. And he comes across a group of musicians. Now, musicians are usually very happy people. Look at that. Very happy people. These musicians, on the other hand, are sad and scowling, and one of them is crying because the wagon that they were using to go to their next gig, the wheel has broken and come off. And so they're not going to be able to go and play music, and they are very, very, very sad about this. Ravi, who was actually pretty excited about the wagon, he could see some really great uses for the wagon in his life, looks at the musicians and says, I have just the thing for you. And he rolls his wagon up and he says, it's smaller than the one you have, but I think all of your instruments will fit, and then you can pull it down the road and make it to your gig on time. And the musicians say, thank you. And they say, you know, we only have one violin and we only have one piano, but we happen to have an extra drum. And we would like to give it to you in return for the wagon. And that is my story. All right. And I would like to invite the kids. We're going to make blessing bags today. It's very exciting. Let's go to Magic Penny, a new song.
Love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. It's just like a magic penny, held in tight and you won't have many. Lend it and you have so many, the world all over the floor. Love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more.
Good morning. My name is Ariel, and this is Greg, and we are the co-chairs of your pledge drive for this year. It's unusual for service to include a bit of business, but we want to make sure that the congregation is well informed about this year's pledge drive, which is kicking off today. As a reminder, the pledge drive is something we do every year in March, asking folks to think about how they can financially support this congregation in the next fiscal year, which begins on July 1st.
All right. So, if you're wearing a name tag, please take a look at it. If you're a member like me, below your name should say the word member. Our message today is for all of you. If you're not a member, then you're here today as our guest, and we are so thankful you are here. We welcome your participation here in this beautiful space on Sundays and throughout the week, in whatever way feels right for you, and hope at some point you'll decide to join us as a member, and at that time, make a pledge.
So, members, we're talking to you. I sometimes think of UUCB like a school, a place I come to learn and grow. Last Sunday, I got to spend time with the kids in Celebration Chapel. In explaining to them what a pledge drive is, I realized it's essentially like homework for all of us, which is never anyone's favorite part of life. But the great news is that 26 people have already pledged a combined amount of $140,000, which is about 1/4 of the way toward our goal. So there's one of these pledge forms tucked into an envelope addressed to each member, sitting on a table right now outside in the atrium. Please, 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 please come and see us and pick up the envelope with your name. We also have some fun things to show you and some things to eat.
So this year, we on the Stewardship Committee are asking members to increase our pledges by 5%. Your generous contributions will continue to ensure that we are able to pay our precious staff fair wages, keep the lights and heat turned on, and make it possible for UUCB to work towards its vision of serving one another, the church community, the community at large, and the global community. Our theme this year is Cultivating Expressions of Love, by highlighting the popular concept of love languages, as Reverend Marcus mentioned. We're excited about the folks who will speak each week for the next 5 weeks on a particular way they share about their love at UUCB. We're glad to have Lynn Cahoon here to kick us off, talking about her favorite love language, physical touch.
Well, I've been given 2 minutes to expound on loving touch. We all know babies need loving touch, holding, rocking, cuddling, in order to thrive. Well, we old folks need touch too. I was so pleased when Reverend Marcus reinstated the practice of joining hands at the beginning of the Sunday service. I'm lucky. I had a happy, loving marriage for over 50 years. When John died, I came to this church to collect hugs. 4 years ago now, this church provided me with a loving companion from whom I can get a hug anytime I like. I hope that you have been touched by this church. Please join the pledge drive so UUCB can thrive, continuing to touch folks now and in years to come.
Just this once before you go. Just one dance, it's only you and me. Don't be scared, I'll help you through. I'll give you something to hold on to. All my life I never dreamed that I could be as happy as this, I'm right here, always for you. This is our something to hold on to. Hold on to me. Hold on to me.
Just because it's fiction doesn't mean it's not real. Child my hand, I'll guide the way. Oh, rest your head, be in the now, right now. Nothing else can ever undo this, our something to hold on to. I'll give you something to hold on to. Hold on to me. Hold on to me. Hold on. I'll give you something to hold on to. I'll give you something to hold on to.
I invite you to take a deeper breath, to settle more comfortably into your seat, to feel your connection down to this good, this holy earth, holding beneath us no matter what. Two 2-year-olds in a sandbox with one red fire truck. No amount of parental pleading, no matter how sweetly toned or reinforced with stern demand, now, sweetie, we have to share, will get the concept across. How quickly the other becomes merely an obstacle, their tears so much less salient than the toy freshly snatched. Taking turns is much easier to grasp, and so a game is created. Perhaps a timer is set, and turn by turn the two are taught a dance of human reciprocity. As a nearby scrub jay buries an acorn she will never find again, the one that will one day spread its branches and become oaken home to her great-great-great-great-grandchildren. There have always been those who refuse the lesson. The lie has been told under many names: the divine right of kings, survival of the fittest, the doctrine of discovery, manifest destiny, might makes right, titans of industry. The world's resources are scarce, they say, and this must be the natural way of things. God of taking turns, God of sharing, of unearned gifts and careless giving, give us the courage to grieve in the face of greed, to wail in lamentation as they rip apart what we have tried so diligently to protect. When we are powerless to stop the harm, remind us that does not mean they have all the power. Root us in the deeper truth of your sacred mutuality. Hold us in our rage at the unfairness of it all, and demand with us once more, O God of justice, that they learn another way. In this community of care and witness, we hold one another through the seasons of our lives. We lift up those joys and sorrows, griefs and gratitudes among us. We remember with Karen Werner this morning of our courageous spiritual ancestors. She lifts up Reverend James Reeves, the UU minister who was killed by a racist mob April 11th, 1965 in Selma, Alabama. With Karen Fontana praying for steadfast hands, precision, and love during my sister Lena's brain surgery tomorrow morning, March 10th. Seema asks for prayers for Vicky Tomasik and her 3 children as she's in hospice at age 58, a devoted mother and friend. And Brent asks for the congregation to hold Sydney's mother Ildy in prayer for continued remission and more healing. Marcia Lanier is having trouble letting go of things, would appreciate your thoughts and prayers. Andrea asks, please hold my daughter in your heart. And someone invites us pray for Ukraine, Gaza, USA, for all the lives and all the places most impacted by the troubles in our world. May we hold them in the love of this gathered community. All the things and names we've spoken, all that remains yet in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, may we know that what each of us holds here or wherever you are joining us from is held in the loving embrace of this community and by a love beyond all names, a love that cannot and will not let us go. May it be so, and amen. Let's remain seated as we sing together, "From You I Receive." It seems so foolish in the face of all that's happening in the logic of this domination system all around us. Seems so foolish to place a faith in generosity. So I've been thinking about fools. I've been thinking about that story of Jack and the Beanstalk and Peter Mayer's way of telling it. Peter Mayer is a UU musician, singer-songwriter. He wrote that beloved anthem of ours, Blue Boat Home. He tells the story of Jack and the Beanstalk like this. Imagine you are Jack in the story, but there's been a change in the storyline. Instead of your mom, taking those beans and throwing them out the window and planting them for you, instead you've been given the responsibility yourself. And you think it over, he says, and you decide, you're not going to plant your beans. And before you know it, you're middle-aged. And he says, those beans, you still have them, they're in your nightstand. You open the drawer, you look at your beans, you ask yourself, are you ever going to plant your beans? Oh, that's not how the story goes, he sings. When do heroes play it safe? You've got a job and a family, but not a single golden egg. I spent some time in my 20s, especially working with an organization called the Faithful Fools in San Francisco. The Faithful Fools were started by a Unitarian Universalist minister, Kay Jorgensen, and a Franciscan nun, Carmen Barsity, working together to develop a street ministry with a very foolish premise. And this is the origin story Kay would tell. She's among the ancestors now, but she would tell this story as the beginning of the Faithful Fools. It was a sunny day in Berkeley, California, and Kay was in seminary. This particular day, she was walking down Shattuck Avenue to get herself some lunch when she suddenly felt something hit her upper arm. She stopped and turned and saw a man standing at the bottom of the BART steps. That's downtown Berkeley BART station. He waved and pointed and yelled up at her, "They're down here!" And she looked down, and indeed there were 2 pennies. She reached down to pick them up and thought, well, now that's strange. She put them in her pocket and she went on her way. And when she got to the blue and gold grocery, she picked out a sandwich and then went back to the refrigerator section to get something to drink. And just then a man walked up to her and said, "You wouldn't happen to have 2 pennies, would you? If I just had 2 more cents, I could get myself this drink." And Kay, of course, did have 2 pennies, so she pulled them out of her pocket and she handed them to the man, and he bought his drink and left. And she'd end the story by saying, "That's when I knew it could work. That's when I knew this ministry of Faithful Fools would be a success." I've heard that story dozens of times and told it a few times, and I still feel like I don't quite understand it. It's such a bizarre moment and such a bizarre origin story for what is still a successful ministry. But there is this invitation, as in everything with the Faithful Fools, who do accompaniment in the streets of San Francisco, folks walking alongside those who are unhoused as they make decisions about how to organize their lives. You have to risk looking like a fool if you're going to plant your magic beans. No real change, no transformation, no love, when we talk about the kind of love that we hold at the center in our articulation of our Unitarian Universalist theology, no transformation comes without this risk. And I notice a paradox in the story, that the seeds of transformation in that Jack and the Beanstalk story, the seeds of transformation of this power to change the nature of reality, they come with both the seeds of transformation and the seeds of stuckness in the same moment. Those magic beans, with all their potential for mythic adventures and giant fighting and golden egg-laying geese in the sky, they also come with the humiliation of having sold a cow for beans. It's the same moment, same seeds. I think about that relationship between shame and pride, how some psychologists imagine that we develop these shame-based identifications growing up because of the ways that none of us are loved just the way we need to be. Shame-based identifications that then we create pride-based counter-identifications to mask, to get through. These humiliating seeds that also hold the potential for giant slaying stalks. In the wounding, in the humiliation, is the wanting. We cling to exactly the thing, these magic beans, that we have to let go of. If we ignore the wound and stick it in the nightstand, we do get stuck. If we instead listen to it, if we discover that it can lead us to the healing we desire, then we know that within the wound, we hear within the wound is the wanting wisdom of what we truly need. Ignoring the wound, it saps us of our ability, our capacity to be generous, to participate in this never-ending cycle of mutuality, turning the generous gesture into a violation of one's own boundaries in an attempt to curry favor or being seen as good. Do you know that kind of generosity that I'm talking about? Generosity that's actually an overstretching of oneself. Not the generosity that comes from knowing I have more than I need and I can provide you with something too, but the generosity that's trying to make up for a wounded sense of deficiency. Or we might give up on generosity entirely as to avoid or attempt to avoid being seen is foolish. Because in this domination worldview, that best way to protect your vulnerability is never allow the possibility of having any weakness exposed, never admit the shame, never know dependency. It's why authoritarian rulers have always been and are all over the world allergic to humor. The authoritarian rule, autocracy, it's incompatible with looking foolish. And what's spiritually true, I believe here, is that separation, that cutting off of vulnerability, that refusal to engage in humor, to be humiliated, to have humility, is about a refusal to be brought down to earth. All these words, humor and humiliation and humble, and they're all rooted in this humulus, this Latin, the earth, low, close to the earth, Having a sense of humor is about being willing to be brought low down to the earth, to understand ourselves in the context that makes our own weird reality absurd. I remember the story of a rally once in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is some years ago. The white supremacists came to town, neo-Nazis, to parade through the streets of Knoxville, and the clowns showed up. Real clowns. Clowns who knew they were clowns. And the clowns who knew they were clowns, they showed up not with angry slogans to chant back, but with playful, fun ideas about how to make a mockery of the whole thing. White power, the neo-Nazis shouted. White flour, the clowns shouted back, and threw clouds of white flour all around. White power, they yelled. Wife power, they shouted, and they had wedding dresses, white bridal gowns. Wife power? White power, they shouted. Tight showers, they said, and they held up a shower head and all crowded together underneath it. There is a mysterious, non-rational, sensical power in the foolish response to those who believe they have power over all. With this season in the Christian calendar of Lent starting this past week, and Fat Tuesday and Mardi Gras, I was thinking about the ways that tradition is rooted in those ancient old European traditions of the Feast of the Fools, those days where you would flip everything on its head and allow the fool, the lowliest, to be high ruler of all, to remind the powerful and the low alike that the nature of reality is not captured in the crown or the throne, that there is a more mysterious, more foolish logic to play in this world. It's also the moment that happens at the end of this Lenten story in a few weeks just before the end, just before we talk about Easter and that whole weird story. We'll get there. But just before that, it's Palm Sunday, right? When in one of my foolish moments, I always, and maybe you've heard me say this before, I always thought the Sermon on the Mount was Jesus riding on the donkey, because I got that. I was a Unitarian kid, and it didn't. But so this Jesus it does ride on the donkey. It's just not the. But so he's riding into town on the donkey, and here's what's the brilliant, foolish mockery of the moment. Is that it's the very same time when during Passover Seder, the emperor would put on a display of his power over the Jewish people by marching through their streets, a visual panoply of imperial power. John Dominic Crossan and Marcus Borg describe it. Cavalry on horses, foot soldiers, leather armor, helmets, weapons, banners, golden eagles mounted on poles, sun glinting on metal and gold, sounds, the marching of feet, the creaking of leather, the crinkling of bridles, the beating of drums, the swirling of dust, the eyes of the silent onlookers, some curious, some awed, some resentful, this display of imperial power right at the midst of this holy feast. And here comes Jesus entering from exactly across town, the other side of town, wearing rags on a donkey and calling himself a king. An act of political theater, of resistance to the logic of empire. In a world run by an extreme kind of greed, it feels foolish to give anything away. I feel it in my own life. I feel so worried about my long-term well-being, my financial future here in a place that's so expensive to live. It's so hard to figure out how much I could give away. It feels foolish to give away anything in the face of all the danger. But what was ever really ours to begin with? Generosity, far from a foolish attempt to play at virtue in an unvirtuous world as they would describe it, a deviation from the natural order of greed and domination, of survival of the fittest. It is, in fact, more deeply of the natural order. The sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." In fact, despite all our thoughtless taking, the earth never says to us, "You owe me." This orientation toward a wild and thoughtless giving, it's part of the primordial nature of the cosmos. And so as the president toys with cryptocurrency and generally adds to the volatility and uncertainty of our lives, I am reminded that our deepest security, the greatest resources of resiliency, come not from our bank accounts, not from our financial investments, but from our investments in one another, in community, in the values that transcend our own lives. As trust erodes the social fabric around us, we can still make deposits here and now with one another. This is why we've named generosity one of our core Unitarian Universalist values now, even though I think it's probably the most aspirational of those values, because it flows naturally from our theological commitment to interdependence. The last president of our association, Susan Frederick Gray, she would talk about in stewardship, it's easy to think about giving to church like one more subscription in your life, like another membership, like the gym membership where you need to pay because you're getting a benefit from it. And in one conception of reality, that sort of makes sense. But the truth is that leaves us with a transactional love that doesn't live up to our values or our theology. Because what happens when we think about our community in this way, and then we've been on a couple of vacations or gotten burnt out and we haven't been around in a while, and suddenly we get sick or a loved one dies. Do you not deserve the love of your community then? Or someone walks in for the first time, do they entering with a broken heart or an empty spirit, do they need to prove that they can contribute something before they are deserving of love and belonging? Of course not. And so instead, Susan says, it's not about paying for what you get here. You and I, we were given this gift by those who came before. Even the most tireless leaders among us, and I'm thinking about Kay Farewell, who I think is serving a third tour of duty on the board, second round as board president. Sure, yes, clap for Kay. Over 30 years of membership here, even those who've contributed a lifetime of service, when you arrived, you received something that had been cultivated by generations before, a faith tradition that echoes hundreds of years back in history, a community prepared for you as a gift that you did nothing, could do nothing to deserve or earn. Through the love we experience when we show up for a service or a chalice circle or to sing in the choir or serve on a committee or we sign a super card or we receive one in the mail, we find ourselves belonging to something greater, something that transcends a stewardship campaign or the next fiscal year, a religious movement carrying a lineage of magic beans, a vision for a world transformed by love. One of the seed parables that Jesus taught, I love these seed parables. He said the kingdom of God is as if someone would scatter seed on the ground and then would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow. They do not know how. The earth produces of itself first the stalk, then the head, then the full grain in the head. But when the grain is ripe, at once they go in with their sickle, because the harvest has come. It's a reminder we're not in charge. Never have been, and that's okay. There are greater forces at work than human hands, than each of our own limited capacities at work in the world. Faith is sometimes about trusting time and spirit to do their work. You don't have to know how it's going to turn out. You don't have to be ready to take on the giant. You just have to open your breaking heart one more time. Reach out your tender hands one more time. Risk once more being seen as a fool. Weep and rage at the state of things, yes, but also stay alert for the appearance of a magic penny. And let your love flow like the tears at all we are losing, watering the ground where you cast your hopeless, foolish, magic beans. May it be so, and amen.
Good morning. I'm Michael DeWitt, a member of your Board of Trustees, and it's great to be with you all this morning. In our covenantal community, we share the responsibility for pursuing our mission by giving of our time, talent, and treasure. I invite you to support the work of our church by giving electronically by scanning the QR code on the back of your badge, or by putting a cash or check donation into the donation envelope that you'll find in the back of the pew in front of you, and then put it into the donation box beside the fountain in the atrium as you leave the service. Each week, half our donation is shared with a nonprofit Good Neighbor organization. The Good Neighbor for this month is Emeryville Citizens Assistant Program, or ECAP for short. Their all-volunteer mission is to unconditionally distribute surplus food, care, and compassion to those in need in Emeryville, Oakland, and surrounding Bay Area communities. ECAP provides nutrition to approximately 300 families/individuals daily, 6 days a week. Will you join me in rededicating ourselves to our mission? We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of an integrity, joy, and service.
There is always a lot happening in the life of our community. I want to lift up a few things for you this morning. You can always find this on the week ahead on our website under the news section. If you're new, of course, and you just want a little bit of information about getting connected here, you're welcome to find anyone at the welcome table before or after the service, and hope you will get connected. Our Parents' Night Out, I want to lift up, is happening this coming Saturday at 4:30. You can sign up on the website. Wonderful way to connect with other parents and then get some time out while kids enjoy time together here. Next week's Personal Theology seminar before the service will welcome local author and poet Becca Black. It's a discussion titled Channeling Jimmy Carter from Albany, Georgia to Albany, California. So I think that'll be really wonderful if you can make it early next week for that. And then the following Friday night, we're going to be having our sunset service, Church du Soleil, that we've been experimenting with. That's Friday evening, a potluck at 5:30, a service at 6:30, and then afterward, a film screening of Counted Out. Which really is I haven't seen it yet. I'm really looking forward to being there and seeing it. I hope you can join, hear about some of the ways that algorithms and math and their intersection with inequality, it's supposed to be quite a tremendous film. And then I just want to lastly invite you to save the date for our Lawrence lecture, which we've built a little conference around this year. So April 19th, we just confirmed this a couple days ago. We've got a wonderful speaker, Ruha Benjamin, coming in. Her work is at the intersection of imagination, innovation and technology, and inequality and justice. She should be an incredible speaker to hear Saturday morning, and then think about coming for the evening before, again, sunset worship, and stick around for workshops with Star King students and professors, our seminary, as well as some other local UU leaders. Lastly, I know many of you already know we're in this name badge process, so please drop off your badges, whether they're new or vintage, in the marked bins at the exit point, and we'll have a new system in a few weeks as we finish transferring them over. Thanks for your patience with that. Will you rise in body or in spirit, and we'll sing together our closing hymn, Make Channels for the Streams of Love.
But
reach out a hand or touch a shoulder or reach out to that mysterious beyond. Let us be connected. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love. Let us be ever foolish in our giving and our loving. Let us go out saying we have been fools for lesser things. May it be so, and amen.